This is RevTech Podcast, where we discuss everything from business processes to measurement and technical alignment. The RevTech mission focuses on effectively managing and optimizing the go-to-market strategy through methodologies, tools, and best practices. We discuss the success criteria and technical fit guides for decision-making and ensure solutions align with the business goals. It brings me a great pleasure to introduce our guest today, Jessie Shipman from Fluincy. Welcome.
Oh, thanks, Dimitri.
Jessie, so good to have you. I'm excited to be chatting with you about this. We've chatted for a long time, back and forth as you've been building this. So I'd love to start with just a high-level pitch of what Fluincy does and is.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so Fluincy, you're going to get my one-liner. This is going to be so great.
Perfect.
Been working really hard on it. I've gotten a lot of feedback. I didn't always have a one-liner, so it feels good. Fluincy helps uncover partnership referral revenue from everyday conversations. So usually I tell people that and then I stop and they sort of say, okay, can you say more? And that's like always what you hope for a one-liner is that somebody's like, that's intriguing enough. It also gives them an out if they're completely uninterested.
They're like, I have no need for that.
I don't care. Yeah, I don't know what any of that means. It lets them walk away and be like, that's nice.
Yeah.
But yes, the idea really is that we're like ingesting call transcripts, and we're looking for the keywords that partners in your ecosystem solve for. So many partner matches kind of come from like, well, we have a similar customer, if there's like an overlap from something like a reveal or a crossbeam. What we're trying to do is actually get to the problem before that, which is the awareness of what partners in an ecosystem do and surfacing up the partners that solve for that problem without the person who's having the conversation even having to know about it or remember it.
Do you have like an easy example of like, we would hear this word in the transcript and think XYZ partner?
Well, let me ask you, like, what would be the words that would make you sit up and be like, oh, that's what ad roll does, right? So it would be like
retargeting.
Retargeting.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. This is so funny. I actually just saw a transcript with this keyword in it, retargeting. And we don't have ad roll. We need to add ad roll into our database. But essentially, like, we would be hearing listening for the word retargeting. And if it came up in a conversation, what we would do is just then send a Slack message to the person who had that conversation to say ad roll does retargeting.
Cool. Yep, that makes total sense. And so what's kind of the story behind starting this company and how did you come to want to start it? I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, for sure. So it really, the impetus for the company had kind of a multifaceted start and some of it is relevant, some of it isn't. But ultimately, like, I was working in partner enablement. Partner enablement really is like my life's best work. I fell into it as many partner pros do. I didn't know that that's what I was getting into when I actually the job that was described to me, it was in the SE organization. And it was what was called like technical enablement. So we were going to be taking some of our like sales enablement, but we were really going to have like a very focused technical spin. And I was fortunate enough to be able to be a part of the strategic partner organization at Apple. So I was able to, I was still working in what we call field engineering. My title officially had SE in it, but what it was a technical partner enablement manager. And what I was doing was like, digging into the relational aspect of this, building out the partnership, asking my partners, like, what is your enablement structure look like and how can we fit into it? How do your people learn? What do they want to learn? What's necessary for them to understand in order to be able to go sell our Better Together story? And we gathered all the data. We created this incredible program. We built all the assets and part of it. And then what I realized was that I was still only meeting with people like once a quarter, right? I had a captive audience for once a quarter. And no, as an educator, I used to be a high school teacher, and so like my background and really who I am as a person is really a teacher, and so like I was looking at this going, the forgetting curve is real. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the forgetting curve, but essentially like you're gonna have a really heightened understanding of content, and you're gonna be really excited about it. But if there's no context to create like a framework in your brain about remembering that information, it tanks. It's gone. And so what I needed was in my brain was like, I need to be able to give them the little bit of information they need around the context that is part of their job. So if a customer comes to them and says, I'm trying to achieve, so for Apple, for instance, right? Like I'm trying to achieve like digitization. I want to get rid of all my 3-ring binders and turn it into an iPad, right? And like hearing those things, somebody should say, I mean, if they said iPad, right, then you would know Apple. But like ultimately you would want to be like, oh, you want to build an enterprise application for iOS, yep. Right? And have them be able to say that. And I wasn't able to get their attention or have their attention enough to do that. And so that's really where like the foundation of the idea of Fluincy came from, was trying to be top of mind.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you said I sell on a partner enablement, I was waiting for the big ticket name of a company because not many people have partner enablement dedication. So, and we're seeing it a little bit more, which is exciting. I know HubSpot recently has put a lot of a few resources towards it, which is great. I had another thought while we were chatting, because I find partnerships people to generally be very skew more towards the teacher mindset because so much of your job is that. How often have you run into that? I don't know if I knew that was your background.
Not as often as, well, so people who really love partner enablement typically have some kind of
of course.
April Trask. Yeah, I don't know if you know April from Cloudinary, but April has like a really interesting like education and teaching background. So I run into it a bit, but most people who are in partnerships fell into it because they were on a sales or marketing team and somebody says, we need to do something with all of these partners and you're it.
You seem like a good person. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. But not a lot of people who have gotten, number one, like into big tech through teaching. Like that's it's
weird
actually
route.
Quite a big leap.
Yeah.
And then from big tech, like usually if a teacher comes into tech, it's through CS.
Yeah.
Because they're really great at relationships. But partnerships usually comes from
marketing
from
or sales.
Marketing.
Yeah.
I think it's I've advocated that for a long time. Like if you're looking for a partner person, go look at a teacher.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And deal with a lot of like competing priorities, cross-functional management, and the educational piece of it. So that's what it just made me
zero
think of it.
resources.
Yeah. All those fun things.
All those things. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I honestly, I think it's a very intuitive thing to have a teacher that is in this role. I would think that is probably my first pick if I need to think about someone, right? I don't think the sales necessarily is a default choice. Some people are really good at selling. They're not necessarily good at teaching others how to sell. And it's almost like with a basketball player that is a great basketball player, but not necessarily a best coach.
That's right.
And the same is here, right? I feel like having a teacher who went through a lot of these difficulties, and I think it was funny about the resources. It gives you this ability to be creative. Seller is a very efficient type of role. It's just getting to the point, sell, close the deal. And here you have to go through the multi-threads and deal with multiple questions that maybe are not relevant for the deal, because the ultimate goal for you is just to teach someone. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Great.
Yeah, for sure. That's if your organization is prepared to do partnerships right. If your organization is really just like trying to use partnerships as a growth hack, like of course you would go to somebody who's a seller to go first.
Yeah.
Not that sellers, I mean, they're brilliant partner people. We know them all who came from sales. Yeah. But they almost always get into partnerships because they've realized that partnerships is a much more efficient way to sell. And then they just decide that they want to do partnerships as a career versus like sticking with selling. I think that's pretty common, but I think if you just are going to toss somebody into it for the first time and without any like context around partnerships, I would agree that a teacher is better than a seller.
Yeah, yeah. So let's move to the next part of our conversation here, and let's talk about capital. And what is your stage of the company, and what is your current financing need at the moment?
Yeah,
More
so
money?
the current what did oh man. So I'm bootstrapped. Fluency is bootstrapped. I plan to stay bootstrapped until we I can only imagine or want to take capital once we get to the point where I would do some kind of like growth equity, and do some kind of secondary. This is probably very, very far down the road. But we're going to be. Somebody said it was another word for bootstrapped is revenue funded. We're a revenue funded business, which I think is just bananas that there are other kinds. But that's the world we live in. So yeah, we're very early stage. We have had this product out since June, so 3 months or so. We have one paying customer, and then we're actually onboarding another 3 customers into our pilot program. We do like a 3-month pilot here in the next couple of weeks. But the reality is that like my very next financial goal is really to just be like operationally sustained. So I'm bringing in enough revenue to run the company indefinitely just on the operations cost. And then, the next goal after that will be enough money to then be able to hire someone, me, or probably more likely my developer. And then the next goal would be then to hire me, and we keep growing the team and growing the product and really like trying to either break even or be profitable as a rule of thumb.
Okay, that sounds great. And what is the plan for the next year or two in terms of the growth? I mean, you said you have one customer. Sounds like you have some operational and financial targets for the next couple of months. And I mean, you have anything you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, it's asking that question of a very early stage founder is usually it's just a shot in the dark, right? I'm just aiming in the general direction of the dartboard. So that operational sustainability is like 5 to 6 paying customers.
Okay.
That would be that's my goal before I've got probably another 10-ish months of runway before Fluincy will cease to exist and no longer have any money to run operationally. So that's the goal, is to not have that happen. But beyond that, I want to be of value. It's not really so much. I imagine that at some point it will need to become about the metrics and the targets. But right now it's like, let me build something that's of value to this community that I have spent so much time being a part of and hearing from, and wanting to build something that's novel and useful and helps to solve this problem that everybody so far has just ignored because it seems just too hard to solve. That's my true north. Like, that's my target. And so like, hopefully as I start to be able to prove that value exists, that I am indeed solving this problem, then we will start to see growth in, whatever that looks like. Ultimate growth to the point of efficiency, and then being able to sort of like have the revenue targets to support, more hiring, and then that sort of thing. So I can't tell you what the number, if I was going to be like, if I was VC funded, right? We already know what the answer is: 300, 200, 200, or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
But for me, it could be a 20% growth. It could be 50% growth. It really just depends on, how we're feeling as a company, how I'm feeling as a founder, and like what what I decide. And that's the great part about not being funded, is that I get to decide how fast I grow.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. It's like if you are raising money, you know exactly what your goals are because you're talking about them all the time with either angel investors or VCs or whatever. And now you get to kind of set your own milestones. There is, you know, money isn't endless, so I'm sure there are milestones that you just mentioned that are you need to hit, but it's got to be kind of freeing because you have been able to pivot and do different things and like really do something that is meaningful and helpful versus trying to hit a target, which is great.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think it's important that the way you put it, because you said about the number of customers and the kind of use cases that are behind that you're trying to put together and create a value, right? I think that's kind of at this stage the most important thing before somebody will invest or commit to invest, right? So I know we're going to talk more about a product, in this conversation. So I'll keep it for the right moment. But in the meantime, maybe we can move to the go-to-market strategy. And Lizzie,
Yeah,
um,
for
yeah,
sure. So you mentioned having a few customers onboarding. What type of customer fits your product best? What are you seeing as kind of like the ideal profile for a customer?
Yeah, so our first customer is an agency. So we kind of are playing a two-sided game here. So the first part is that if you have an ecosystem, right? Like that's table stakes. You have to have partners in an ecosystem.
How many?
And
How many ecosystem
um
partners?
so I think that if you get beyond 5, you're asking your sellers to remember a lot,
Agreed.
right?
Yep.
So to me it's like 6 or more, um where you're actually, and again, like the problem we're trying to solve is like the capacity of the human brain to remember the better together stories of not only your product but all of the products in your ecosystem.
Yep.
And so anybody who has an ecosystem that's larger than 6 really is like a good fit right now, right?
Yep.
We actually won't know like what our product market fit is until we've put it in the hands of a bunch of people and tested it and see where the chips kind of fall. But our first customer is a RevOps agency. So they essentially are saying like, we're going to come in and help you get all of your RevOps into an efficient state. And they have about 50 partners that they work with that they actually have a direct revenue share with. And we listen for those partners. And the value prop to them is that they actually want to open up their partners as a revenue stream, right? So they have these 10% or 20% or whatever the revenue share is. And what we're doing is uncovering those partners so that at scale, they can actually start bringing in that rev share. The other coin of this is if you're a tech company who has a tech partner program that you're really trying to help to create these solutions, particularly for like CS, maybe sales, probably more like BDR, so that you can get it in really quickly, like get the partner in before the deal is 3/4 of the way down
Yep.
down the sales cycle. But or a CS, right? Because we all know that like retention and integration are like linked very
Sticky.
closely together.
Yeah.
Very sticky. And so if a CS, as you're doing a QBR or talking to a customer, if a CS is able to say, oh, hey, we have a partner that solves that problem, and then they help the customer actually solve the problem with the partner, like that's a really interesting and critical way to go about that.
Yeah.
Which can also then help with cross-sell and upsell and whatever else the targets might be around CS. So those are kind of the two sides of the coin. And then the other piece is for these tech companies who have channel partners, right? So like if you have an agency partner, a bunch of agencies or a bunch of solution partners that go and implement your software, like you will want all of their sellers and consultants to be aware when you're the right solution. And so we're playing with that idea as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. The agency, there's so many agencies that have come up in these larger ecosystems, whether it's Shopify or HubSpot or whatever it may be. And as it becomes harder and harder to be an agency in the macroeconomic situation, it's an interesting flip of the switch to think about, do my partners become a revenue source? Because they really can be. Like referral fees out there are pretty generous. Um, and so to make sure your teams are well aware of it, because I just think there's a lot of missed opportunities to send over a referral that could turn into a pretty big payout for the agency. So, and then, yeah, the sell through part of it. Like we work with a lot of solutions partners. We want to make sure they're thinking about us. Does this become something that you now have as part of like your agency partner benefits where you actually get access to this tool, which is a cool concept?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It kind of, the idea again is to solve that top of mind problem, right? Like if you have an agency that's a partner of yours, they're probably partners with 20, 30, 50 other companies. And if they're doing this at scale, remembering who you are and what you do is the most difficult. Again, like I really believe this, that awareness is the most difficult part of partnerships. Once they're aware and you've done a deal together and the relationship is built and the trust is there, they'll keep going back. They'll keep going back to you. They'll remember that experience. But like the awareness is the biggest barrier to trust.
Yeah. I always think about like, I just need this person at the agency to sell one deal with us and then we'll have
Just
them.
one.
But it's that's like a big wall to get over, is that first deal. So,
Yep.
how are you going to market right now? It sounds like you're getting to like kind of that partnerships model with tech companies selling through, but are you mostly doing it product led, sales led? I'm assuming not too much marketing led. But how are you going to market at the moment?
Yeah, it's founder led sales. So at this point, and I really do ascribe to this sort of like, I guess I could call it the pavilion model, but I don't think it's actually the pavilion model. That's just where I learned it. But essentially, like it's founder led sales and growth through the ideas of community and relationship, right? And founder brand, right? So I started out building a brand on LinkedIn almost 2 years ago of just like really only talking about partner enablement, and also talking about, you know, the founder journey and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So building that founder brand, and then and also like being of value to the communities I choose to be in, and just being like a genuinely like kind, helpful person. For the sake of being kind and helpful, right? But all of that goes into the brand. Which is great because that's who I am. And then using and leveraging those relationships to say, like, I'm trying to build something of value here. And like, we have a relationship. And if you think it's valuable, I would love for you to be able to try it and then give me feedback, give me revenue, like, and then hopefully it's symbiotic, right? Like, I just used a buzzword. Sorry. Hopefully, like there's a give get, right? Like that's the thing is, and I'm not trying to sell vaporware. What I'm trying to do is solve for this problem that everybody says they have.
Yeah.
And if you have the problem, try the thing. If it's useful, great. If it's not, no big deal. Our relationship is still intact, and I'm still here to be helpful. And that's literally my go-to-market right now.
Yeah.
I don't have it doesn't make any sense for me to essentially you kind of build that, you know, personal brand, do some founder-led sales, and then it's word of mouth from there, right? Like as soon as I get like some wins under my belt of this is how Fluincy works, this is what we've gotten from it, here's the actual like revenue numbers, because once it's working, like there's a really clear correlation between like awareness and revenue. And then once I sort of like the word of mouth thing sort of dies out, then I'll probably kick in some demand generation marketing. And I won't go to sales led growth until there's demand enough for a salesperson to come on, and there's a process that person can follow. It doesn't make any sense for me to go about hiring a bunch of salespeople before all of that process and demand is already in place.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I think you've done a really good job putting out like a lot of educational content generally about partnerships to explain this problem, to explain the opportunities, and not just this problem, lots of problems, but also the opportunities within partnerships. And then by nature, when someone has a question, they're going to come to you, and it also gives you an opportunity to share what you're doing and whatnot. So it's been a smart method to take. Um, who are some of your competitors? Are there any competitors doing this, and what does the market or industry look like?
Yeah, I like to say I learned this from another founder, but I like to say that our competitor is the status quo, right? So everybody's just sort of like, it's fine that this is a problem. What we'll do is we'll just keep onboarding partners until 20% of them become helpful to revenue, and that's sort of like I even have conversations today with people who are like, where do I start? And I'm like, have you identified your keywords and told them to the people? And they're sort of like, oh, no, I didn't even know to start there. And so I actually tell people all the time, like, you can do what Fluincy does without Fluincy, right? Like, it's more difficult and it's not automated and it's not scalable, but you could do it, right? Identify your keywords and then have a workshop. Like, go do a workshop with the sellers at your partners and have them, you read them some copy or pretend that you're on a call with them, and then have them identify those keywords in real time. And then you can maybe get some of that stickiness, right? Some of that learning happening where they can start to hear and listen for your keywords. They better know what the Better Together story is. They better know how to engage you once they've identified it, right? But Fluincy actually does all of that for them. And so, like, I am now forgetting what the question was. Sorry,
Your competitors. No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But no, you made me think of a good point of like, this is a good exercise to do, generally speaking, with or without Fluincy,
Yeah.
of like, what is the one line for each of these partners? What words do salespeople hear or CS people hear that they should be, like, a bell should go off in their head? Because I think what we tend to do as partnerships people is like, we give them all of this information. Here's all the things it can do. But really what you need to tell them is, here's like the one thing it does. And that's what to cue off of. So that's step one, is like, what is even that story? And then that you have your implementation plan essentially for Fluincy.
Yeah. And the other competitor, I guess, in this is the one I hear a lot, is like, doesn't Gong do that? And I'm like, for sure. Gong creates transcripts. It identifies keywords. But in terms of like the ecosystem play, there's so many more steps that have to come after the keywords are identified, right? So it's literally like the one partner, but this is how I've heard that people do it. I've actually had prospects tell me that this is how they do it. So that from Gong, they are doing the keyword search across multiple salespeople in their organization. Then, so they're grabbing that transcript, they're looking at the context. If they find that there's a good partner match, then they have to reach out to each individual seller through a Slack message, and then they have to give them what they need. And then they kick off the workflow process for engaging in a partner. And sometimes they don't get to it until the end of the week. Like, they have a process at the end of the week, they do it. So whoever the prospect was is already a week into the sales cycle. And now the AE might be like, no, we're not doing anything to mess this up. Like, the partner doesn't need to be involved. It's not super important, blah, 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 right? Whatever the excuse is, I don't trust partnerships. I don't want those partner people around my clients or whatever, right? And so Fluincy is doing this in real time so that you're not like, there's not that lag. And then also it frees up the partner person from having to actually do that work.
Actually doing something strategic. I literally zoned out as you started to explain that Gong process after about step 3. And I was like, I don't even want to understand what's happening here, because it's a lot of steps that I would never get to. So yeah, you're breaking that down into a much easier automated version of that, which is awesome.
So we have a Gong integration. And so what I told somebody the other day was that we're like the ecosystem companion to Gong. Like, if you already have Gong in place and it's working really well for sales training, forecasting, keyword identification for all kinds of other like revenue operations, that's amazing. Just tack on Fluincy and we add the ecosystem automation.
And will you do the transcribing if they don't already use Gong? Okay.
No, we don't do any of our own transcribing.
So you have to be using a tool that does that, essentially.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Google Meet does it, and so does Zoom. Zoom now transcribes every call. So as long as you have one of those and you're in some kind of like business account for either one of those, it'll do
It
it.
will work. Yep, that makes sense.
Yep.
Go ahead,
I'm
Demetrius.
sorry, go ahead. I have one question I want to ask in terms of the competitors. So there are typical or maybe natural suspects in the kind of enablement space, like Seismic, Brainshark, Highspot, Showpad, right? These are the kind of typical names that are just thrown when you're talking about enablement, sales enablement for the most part, but not only. I'm just curious, what is your position against these tools and their platforms, right? And
Yeah.
what is making the Fluincy different?
Yeah, so Fluency does a call to action. Like, first of all, we're only the only place that a user ever interacts with Fluency is Slack. So what we realized and recognized after doing, I did a ton of research, and people were like, if you're going to build a sales tool, you better not ask anybody to be in it.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing people want is another place to log in. So users literally, when they get invited to Fluency, they log in, they see a one-page dashboard that has the connect button to Slack and the connect button to Zoom and Google Meet, and they connect the two, and then they leave Fluency and they never have to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Unless something, gets disconnected or whatever, right? But like they're not constantly logging into Fluency to see things. They're not going in there to actually get any of the enablement. And so the Slack message that we send actually has a call to action in it. And that call to action could go to Seismic, could go to Highspot, could go to Brainshark, if that's where the enablement lives. And also like if that's where the partner person wants that person to go, right? So if what you want your salespeople to do is hear about a partner and then learn about what to do next, you could send them to one of those enablement platforms. If what you want, though, is for them to fill out a deal reg form, you could make it do that. If what you want them to do is send a Slack message to the partner person, you can make it do that. So like it's whatever the partner workflow is. We don't want salespeople, number one, to have to remember sales or CS, customer facing roles. We don't want them to have to remember what every partner does. And we don't want them to have to go searching for what to do once they find out. And so we just give it all to them right there, whatever the flow is.
So is it fair to say that these larger mainstream platforms, they acting in this space as a information aggregation or a kind of repository, and then what Fluency is really doing is like converting that with the additional intelligence through the conversation into action. So it's pushing these people to really make an action, call them, react, and do something about this instead of just having an information that lives on the platform. It's never really action, and if it does, it's just too late.
Yeah, it's actionable and directional.
Okay.
So it's not just like it's not just data for the sake of data, right? So we're actually like taking this conversational data and turning it into something helpful and useful.
So in that sense, that's a complementary solution to what the mainstream is. Okay, that's cool.
Yes. Yep.
The connector. I have a bunch of questions, but I think it's a good time to maybe dig into the demo section because I think some are going to get answered there.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a super easy demo because Fluency is a really simple product. It's intended to solve a problem in a simple way. It's not intended to be complicated. So essentially, like this is what our sort of dashboard looks like at the moment. And what you can see here is like every user in your organization, how many partners have been surfaced to them and how many times they've actually engaged with that partner. It also gives you their role. And then when you click on their name, it actually tells you which partner has been surfaced in a conversation, and then how many times that partner has been surfaced and how many times they've actually clicked on it. So you can kind of see like these are all the partners that have ever been surfaced in any conversation I've had. So as a partner manager and organizer is what we call them, you would be able to actually come in here and see, hey, Jessie got an impression. Let's see how many I've got here. Got an impression or 3 impressions from Monday. Let's say this was like 5 or 6, right? Like a whole mess of them. But they're not clicking. Like what's going on there, right? Why are they not clicking on the call to action? And then you can actually go have like an informed decision with this person, saying like, is it because the keyword is off? Is it because you've used them before and know how to get a hold of them? Like, what is the deal? Why are they being surfaced to you, but you're not saying anything or doing anything about it? So you can actually see all that information. This is a very simple, settings. Obviously, you can change your organization name. This is where all of our integrations live. So you can see here that Gong is actually like a administrator level. So you can only see it if you're an admin. If I was a user, I would only see Slack, Google Drive, Zoom, and this Chrome extension that we built. And then you can generate an invite link, and this is how you invite people into your organization, your Fluincy organization. So that's kind of what just an organizer sees from the Fluincy perspective. And then this is actually what a user would see. So you can kind of see here, Fluincy is an app. It does not have sending turned on. And what happens is you finish a call, Fluincy will automatically process the transcript. And then if there's a partner match, it literally just sends here's the partner, here's what the partner does, and here's that call to action we were talking about. So it gives you kind of the meeting name, the partners, and then, a little bit of context about what to do.
Can you have more than one call to action in there? Like a learn more and something like a refer?
Two of these buttons?
Yeah.
Right now it's just one.
Okay. But they get the high level overview. And then you can have multiple partners. So if 3 partners are brought up in a meeting, you could have all 3.
Yeah. So you can see here that there's 6 in this one.
Yeah.
And very soon, this week, we will actually be giving the keyword that triggered this partner to give a little bit more context. And then in the next several weeks, very short on our roadmap, is actually to give lots of context. So, Qualtrics, this is the keyword that triggered it. Here's why it might be a really good match. And we're giving it a 4 out of 5 stars in matchability.
Oh, cool.
That sort of thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, Monday was one that I was like, that might be tricky. I bet the word Monday comes up.
We're not actually searching for the name of the company.
You're searching for the use case and then recommending
the problem.
Yep.
That's right. Yeah,
that makes sense.
So how all of that would be reflected in the CRM? Is there any connection here from the Slack to CRM? Okay.
Yeah. So because of the bootstrappy nature of this, we are if you have an integration use case, we will build it. If you sign a paid contract. So we haven't had anybody be like, well, I really need this to be in Salesforce, but I have a Salesforce developer account. We're ready to build an integration like that, but because Salesforce can be integrated in a bajillion different ways, we're just waiting until somebody has a really compelling use case that they need that information in, and then we can go from there.
And honestly, I think Slack's better. I think salespeople are going to pay attention to a Slack message.
Think, what Dimitri is getting at is more if somebody clicks on the referral button, would it record it in Salesforce that somebody had engaged with this partner?
Yeah.
So that there is a record of the partner engagement.
Yeah.
My RevOps mind is just kicking in.
Agreed.
And I think a lot of these agencies that you're working with, I think they will look for that as well, because that's how they can prove the valid case to use it.
I could not agree more. I just need that use case from somebody who's willing to pay for it.
Exactly, right. And I think it's having this element of control, and I don't like the word control, but I think what I mean by the control is that you see the data and you can actually assess of the level of usage and adoption of that tool. I think it's helping the sellers to really see, okay, this is a good investment. But at the same time, a lot of these individuals, they can look at the data. Actually, it's not only me who is using this. This is an entire team that is using it. So why not really continue on that journey? And that is supporting your case, right? So it's not about really killing management by reporting at the very detail. I think it's just probably at the aggregate level to see whether this is working and to what extent, and also give them an insight into where they should, allocate more resources to build stronger relationships with these partners.
And the attribution piece is huge, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a one thing to sell, one to action, but also see on multiple levels whether this is working and how to really fix this, right? Because if you have 3 levels of that relationship, and one of them is maybe not working well, just because you couldn't see, well, you're essentially leaving money on the table.
Yeah.
Right. So it's worth to have that visibility. Although I agree with Lizzie and on Slack note, because Slack is designed to be actioned. I mean, I don't know how many less emails we're writing right now because of Slack. Let's be honest.
Yep.
Right, because it's something that pops up and you can immediately respond, and it's very convenient, as it should be. So yeah, that's where I was going with this.
No, that makes sense. I think from this is a clear potential partner influence revenue source, which is actually really hard to track, generally speaking. So eventually that will be a nice thing to have in whatever CRM they're using, and it automatically gets marked as, oh, they took an action with a partner influence, and it's something else to justify that partnership.
Totally.
Okay, shall we move to the product part, or?
Yeah,
Lizzie?
Let's do it.
Like to.
Oh yeah, that's my section. Apologies.
Yeah, let's.
I was like waiting for Demetrius to
just calling you
like,
out.
let's go. Yeah. So you started to hint a little bit at a few of the things on the product roadmap, which are exciting, just to like rounding out what that Slack message actually says. What else are you working on, or are you excited to potentially work on in the future when it comes to the product that you haven't mentioned yet? I know we've talked through a few things.
Yeah, so our biggest thing right now is just making sure that there's context. The feedback that we've gotten so far is like, I actually don't know why this partner was surfaced. And so because I don't know why this partner was surfaced, like, I'm actually not going to take any action on it. And then Fluincy just becomes noise. And that's about the last thing I want to do, is create more noise in people's worlds. And so we've really started taking a look at, this is going to sound so buzzy, and I hate that it sounds buzzy, but like the reality is that generative AI is actually like built very specifically for
this use case,
kind of use case. We're not building, like, I just want to be super clear, we're not building a skin on AI. You're not going to see something in Fluincy that says like, make this better with AI. Like, what we're really doing is saying like, weirdly enough, I don't know if you know this, but AI doesn't do a command F very well. Like, if you give it a chunk of text and you say, find all of the instances of this word, it won't do it. It's not designed to, because it's a next word generation engine, right? It's just trying to find like the next great word in a sequence of words that ends up in some kind of logic. And so if you feed it a transcript, it won't look for words. You have to identify them, right? And so what we're really trying to get at is being able to say, like, once we've identified that there is a keyword match, being able to grab the context around that keyword, use generative AI combined with the rest of our data model around the context of a partnership, in order to be able to say, this is why this partner, right? And then also be able to learn from ourselves and our own matches to say, like, this was a terrible match, right? Like, we're actually going to be learning as we go along. Our own data model will be learning as we go along to say, this was a bad match. Like, maybe we shouldn't use this keyword or this version of a keyword or something like that. But that context is, I think, the biggest missing piece that we have right now that we're really trying to solve for. I think we solve for it a little bit by surfacing which keyword it was that matched with which partner. And so we can solve that one pretty quickly. But again, like, going back to, we're a bootstrap company, and so things just happen a little bit slower. But we'll get there. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, it's the thought that you would actually pull out like the entire sentence, or give more context to like when the keyword was said. And then you obviously recommend the partner, but could the generative AI, and I'm not great at generative AI, so it might be a silly question, but could it actually prompt the salesperson or CS person of what they should say? Like, hey, we talked about XYZ, therefore you should use this partner because it does blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so the context, and the context is going to come from a couple of different places. Some of it is actually like user-generated context. So the organizer, when they are setting up Fluincy, will get the opportunity to add what they want their keywords to be, and then also what they think the partner solves for, right? Because a company like Salesforce could solve for, or HubSpot could solve for 100 different use cases, right? And so, like, what are the things that those companies do for you as part of your better together story is an important piece of context, right? Because like I can put context into generative AI and see based on these number of criteria, like, is this a good match? But if what that company does is 5 different things and you're really focused on the one, like I wouldn't know that as the creator of Fluincy. And so I actually need you to tell me what is the better together story, or what does this company solve for in your particular context. And so once we kind of have that back and forth between us and our users, then we can actually say, like, this is why we think this is a good match, and use generative AI to give the context that comes in the Slack message that they could literally then copy and paste
yeah.
and send to a customer if they wanted to.
You got to make it easy for these salespeople. No shade on them, but they have a lot of things going on.
Yeah,
and
they have a ton of things going on. Yeah. And adding a partner really does add a lot of stress. It really does. And they have to really trust that that process is going to be beneficial to them and that they're going to get something out of it. And so, like, we want to remove as much of the friction out of that process as we can.
Yeah. And as the sale gets larger, or as, more and more, I feel like tech in certain ways is like pulling back together, but in other ways splintering. It might not be just one partner, right? So it might be 3. And so to be able to explain, okay, we have these 3 partners that solve for the things we talked about, like it starts to become a lot. It's hard to talk about it sometimes as a partner person, much less someone who's not in them day in and day out. So
yep, for sure.
I think the sales is getting more complex in general, right? No matter where you are, which company you are, it's becoming more complex, especially when you're trying to scale it, because you have to double down on something, and you have to make the decision, right? So you can't go with too many options, and choosing one, that is a really difficult process, right? And of course, there's a lot of testing before and getting that information. But among all of them, I feel like the use cases that we discuss here, they're giving a lot of opportunity to be cost efficient and scale with a fairly low CAC. However, there's one case that I can't solve for, and I'm always struggling with in this space. We mentioned a lot about agencies, and I think there are some industries that are heavily relying on the agency like partnerships, right? What is your take on creating the right incentives for the agencies to start working with you? Right?
Yeah.
Because from my experience, it's one of the biggest problems. How to convince someone that the deal I'm offering has everything they need, and they're gonna agree with that.
So I asked an agency owner, the CEO of an agency. I said, "So what are the kinds of partners that you prefer to work with?" And he said, "The ones that pay me." Like, it's just really as simple as that, right? I mean, and there are some. My current customer has grown his entire 91% of his revenue in 2022 came from either community or partnerships. Mm-hmm. So he understands, like, that's incredible. 91%. And he's a wizard at the community at grabbing pipeline from communities. But he also knows that, like, when he treats his partners with love, his partners treat him with love. And so, like, that's kind of, not all agencies think like that, but like he really does. But this other partner, or this other agency owner, was essentially like, if your incentive to work with me is that I get $250 one time for making a referral, like, piss off, right? I want you to pay my mortgage, not my Starbucks bill. So it's essentially like, just to start with, like, is the incentive like long? Do they get it over the lifetime? of the customer. Like if the customer keeps coming back and renewing with you because of my referral, do I continue to make my 20%? Do I make 10% and initially and then make 10%, or 20% initially and then 10% year over year after that? Like those are like really compelling, especially if you don't have any trust to begin with. Like trust me because I'm going to pay you, right? Like, and then also like this piece of enablement where you're like, I'm going to make it super easy to work with me, right? Here's the link,
Yep.
right? Or whatever it is. Like they shouldn't have to dig through 5 people to make a referral. And then I think one of the biggest pieces, once you sort of established that the actual contract, is that when they send you a lead, you treat the lead like it's the hottest lead you've ever had, right? Because if they're sending you leads and then those partner generated leads sit in the CRM and nobody's touching them for months, of course they're not going to send you any more leads. Like they trusted you. They trusted you to take care of their customer and you failed. Yep. So like that, to me, those are the big, like you have to jump on the trust once you've overcome the awareness, and you overcome the awareness by giving them a lot of money, enabling them well, and then treating their leads with like the utmost concern.
One of my go ahead, Demetrius.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say one of my like biggest complaints about any partnerships tool that we're looking for our partners to use is, oh yeah, you just have to have your partner log into this platform, and you
yeah,
and you already touched on that of like you don't log in ever again. Your partners don't have to, and I think that's like potentially to set up, right? Potentially to put in your payment information or whatever it may be. But like after that, they need to be able to do it via Slack, via an email, via a link or something like that. Because I barely log into all of our tools. Why would a partner log into the tools I've asked them to log into? I think like something that's coming up for me is the Fluincy is reliant on other sales and partner tech tools also being successful. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the trends that you're seeing there, what you think's working well, what you're hoping will start to emerge across some of the sales and partner tech tools out there.
Yeah, so I think that it's following the same trend that sales tech did in 2010 and that MarTech did in 2015 or whatever, 2018, right? So it's sort of like one company created this single pane of glass. They rode the juggernaut wave into, everybody's future, the way that Salesforce sort of did. But then Salesforce became this enterprise behemoth, and really small companies cannot afford them. And so what ends up happening is we create this tech stack of a bajillion different little companies that are like decently priced, and to solve like an overarching problem, usually or sometimes in a better way than the single pane of glass could do, right? So like I think the same thing is happening with partner tech. Partner tech has been around for a long time, a really long time, and there are some really great companies that are out there, but they were designed to solve for what was partner problems, and those were usually channel problems, and channel was only really available to the very big. You only had a channel sales team when you were big enough to need one.
Yeah.
But now ecosystem is sort of the moat across the board. They're asking founders at my stage to think about their ecosystems. And you can't ask founders at my stage to think about their ecosystems without point solutions that help them to solve the incremental problems until they need the bigger giant solution. And I think that's what's happening with partner tech too, is that like we have really awesome companies being very good at their specific thing. And then what is really going to be important though is to hit that integration piece a long time before MarTech and sales tech did it.
Yes, that'd be great.
And start thinking about, as an example of what partnerships should be, maybe the partner tech companies should figure out partnerships a long time before the marketing and sales tech companies figured it out in their own ecosystems. And so for me, what I'm thinking about is like, could the call to action in a Fluincy message trigger a superglue workflow, right?
Yep.
Could a call to action in a Fluincy message lead you to a partner fleet marketplace listing, right?
Yeah.
And
referral link or whatever it may be. Yeah.
Or a Euler referral link, right? Or like what? So we're just thinking about all the different ways that like I kind of see Fluincy as like the very first step in partner engagement, right? Because we're identifying even if you don't know that the partner exists or what it solves for, we're going to identify that for you and get the whole ball rolling. And then all of these other amazing companies that have been created in this space then can pick up the next piece and then pick up the next piece and pick up the next piece until there's momentum for the ecosystem.
Yeah. I think what I've seen in like the more in the startup realm of partner tech is a lot of that happening. It's like, yep, we do this thing and we do it well, and we're going to connect with this partner because they do this thing well, and we will build that better together story. So I'm glad it's actually coming to fruition with all these partnerships, people building these tools.
Yeah. I hope so. Yeah, I'm really hoping so. I think we're all at the point too where we're like, is there a customer that we can do this together with?
Yes.
So Fair. We're getting there. Yeah.
So I have one question about the trends. So in direct sale, there's probably a theme of the year. We're moving up in the up market, in terms of targeted accounts. Before we're doing this long tail thing and, the small companies, we're doing freemium. Now we don't do this. We want to move to the big companies. And of course, there's a saturation. There's a lot of these big companies, they have a very strong policies about buying things. And it's actually much harder to get in than ever. Right? Especially if you have a current market conditions. So do you see any similar trend in the partnership industry, right? Like this is moving towards a specific segment or segments. It's actually doing any segmentation from the tools and solutions perspective. Do you see anything like that?
I think it's actually kind of the opposite. Because channel partner tools or like legacy partner tech was really designed only for enterprise to begin with, because partnerships and ecosystems were only for the very big. It just wasn't a thing that you thought about until you were like a Series C company. And then you started to be like, oh, I guess we should probably figure out how to partner with the other companies in our ecosystem to pull on this other growth lever. And so what I think is actually happening is that smaller companies are starting to recognize partnerships as something they should invest in. Now, to be fair, a lot of these companies think that partnerships is a growth hack. And so they're like, let's hire a partner person and then we'll just grow. And that's not really how it is. But there are a lot of really well-intentioned CEOs out there who know that this is like a long-term investment and who get it and are making the right plays and hiring the right people and investing in the right technology. They don't need a PRM. They don't need a PRM. What they need is like really thoughtful tech that helps them to scale their partner programs. And so I actually think that like it's the mid markets, the small to mid markets that need most of the help of point solutions like Fluincy. Now, granted, like this is a cloud marketplace problem, right? Like imagine you've got sellers at AWS, GCP, Microsoft, who literally have no idea the breadth and depth of the number of companies in their marketplace. And yet they actually get lots of incentive to sell through their marketplace. There are entire consulting firms. Tackle, like literally its whole existence is helping you to get listed properly inside of a marketplace, inside of a cloud marketplace, and then help you to co-sell with those teams because it's such a difficult thing to be top of mind. Like imagine if Fluincy was able to sell into an AWS and all of a sudden they had immediate access to the partners that solve the problems they're having with their customers without them having to go dig through a marketplace or be consistently bombarded with all of this enablement material from all these companies.
Yeah, like I'm
just saying,
no,
could be really big.
Well, being at Inbound a couple of weeks ago, it's something they're working through, right? How do we get our sales and CS teams to understand the apps available in our marketplace so that they sell them more? Because we know when people use our apps, they stick around longer and get better usage out of our product.
Yep.
And so it is an enterprise problem that has not been solved. I think they have solved a lot of those larger marketplaces have solved a lot of problems in-house, like a directory or even a PRM system. They can build it in-house. Maybe they have it on top of some software, but they've solved it. So I think you're absolutely right. Like it is very much a mid-market problem. I can't get us to build a large-scale directory in any sense that's going to be efficient. But the Fluincy specifically, I think, is something that most companies still haven't cracked the code on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Cool. Well, we're on to our last round. So kudos to the industry. What are a couple of companies that you, and I know we've talked about a bunch, so maybe you've already brought some of them up, but a couple of companies in the space to sales tech or partner tech that you're really excited about right now and think are doing some cool stuff?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is relationship focused, right? So like these are partner tech
Isn't that
founders
life?
that
Like it's all
yeah, I know.
relationship
Like
based.
it's gonna
That's what it's all about.
it's gonna
Partnerships. It's a relationship.
it's gonna be one of those things where like these are the people who believed in me 18 months ago when I was like, look at me, I'm a founder, and like and really had like zero things to sell and no idea what I was doing, and they were like, we believe in you, and you know, and never once have been like disparaging or anything like that. So clearly like super glue, partnerportal.io. Greg Portnoy is doing, I think, going to do, if he delivers on his promise with Euler, I think it will be incredibly disrupting to the PRM space. And I really love Kenny and Cody and the entire team at Partner Fleet. And aside from, you know, them doing what they do really, really well, right? Like that's the whole point, is that they're really focused on the one thing that they do really well. They're also just like amazing people, every one of them. Eddie, Rob, Greg, Kenny, Cody, you know, all really amazing people.
It's going to be clear that we run in the same circles because most of those people either we've already recorded with or we're going to, but agree that they're wonderful people. The one thing, and we've talked about this before too, we need to get some more women in that group of people, and they'd be
I was
open
actually
arms.
just like, I was actually just going through that in my brain of like, oh man, I didn't name like a single woman. So Naomi Dreyfus is a wonderful person. She's coming out with a new partner tech. And for the life of me, I'm really sorry. I wish
We'll get her on here. Don't worry.
It's eluding me. Yeah, it's eluding me like what she's doing. Obviously, I love Cass and Autumn over at Partner Tap. They're killing the enterprise account mapping space. Crap.
Yeah.
Women founders in partner tech. I should know better. Dina, is it Moskowitz?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not to put you
partner optimizer. Is that right? She does a really cool like helping you figure out what your IPP thing is. Yeah. It's fine that you're not putting me on the spot. I'm trying to like, dig them all out of my brain. So yeah.
Cool.
All right.
I got my besties though, you know, like I just got besties.
Well, we'll figure that. You know, so like Lizzie said, you know, we're gonna have the same circle here for a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
Alex Buckles. I forgot to mention Alex Buckles of Forecastable.
Okay, I don't know too much about Forecastable. This is great.
Yeah. Alex is doing some cool.
To follow. Yeah.
He's also making some pivots that might be really interesting to talk to him about. So yeah.
Cool. We do this to like obviously give people shout outs, but what it really becomes is like a lead source for us for future podcast episodes. Yeah. It's multifaceted.
Yeah.
Jessie, where can people find you and Fluincy?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I am on the LinkedIns more than I care to be.
Same.
But I'm on LinkedIn. If you message me, I almost always message you back almost immediately, unless I was sleeping. So sorry to everybody who's in the ANZ region. You'll have to wait 12 hours. And then my website is getfluincy.com, and Fluincy is spelled with an I, so Fluincy. You can also check out my podcast. It's called Literal Scratch. It's me and Aaron Howerton and Adam Pash as we
Dynamic partnership duo.
genuinely just shoot the shit every Friday and talk about partnerships and life and jobs and family and all that kind of stuff. So
That's awesome.
Sounds
Cool.
good. It's probably a good place to stop and wrap it up. Thanks for this episode. Thanks for sharing your demo and details. I think we have a clear understanding what your product is about and where you're going. And thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the RepTech Podcast. Please subscribe on the listening platform of your choice and leave us a review to let us know how we're doing.